A decade ago, I was living in Athens, Georgia. A wonderful community, and I had some wonderful friends. And one of those friends was moving to Maine, quite a distance up the East Coast, and was looking for a driver for the U-Haul truck, and I volunteered. I thought it would be nice to see the sights as I went along. I'd never been to Maine, so it was a good thing for me. I traveled very comfortably up most of the East Coast. It was when I got around New York City that it got a little hectic. And I did that early in the morning to try to avoid, to no avail. It was still pretty hectic. And as I continued, it began to quiet down. And in Massachusetts, I ran upon this sign that said Concord. Anybody know about Concord, Massachusetts? Somebody tell me, somebody here, or you can even unmute if you're online. Tell me something about Concord, Massachusetts. Why is it important? Who lived there? Something like that. Anybody know? Well, it was an important Revolutionary War site. I see some heads nodding, so somebody did know. Just didn't answer the quiz. But it was also the home of three important transcendentalists: Ralph Waldo Emerson, Bronson Alcott, that was the father of Louisa May Alcott, Little Women, and of course, Thoreau. Well, when I got off that interstate and I traveled 8 or 10 miles east to Concord, it really began to be quiet. And because I had started very early in the morning, I arrived there at about 7 o'clock. Went to the visitor center because it is a tourist destination, and no one was there. So I began to find my way around town and see if I could get a little something out of Concord. And as I went down the street, I noticed a sign, the home of Bronson Alcott. And there was a man walking alongside the road. I said, tell me a little bit about this. Do you know about this? He said, oh, I'm the caretaker for this place. Well, Bronson Alcott was a teacher. He was a teacher. He knew his calling. And he had this little teaching building. Well, it wasn't too little. And the caretaker said, well, come on, I'll show it to you. So I got a guided tour of Bronson Alcott's teaching building, hard wooden benches. It was probably not very comfortable, but that was neat. I went on to explore the town and noticed there was an Emerson museum, but it was not yet open. And then I noticed a sign that said Walden Pond, pointing in the distance. So I went down there. Well, it wasn't really the serious and official entrance to Walden Pond, but there was a grove of trees surrounding a lake. It isn't really a pond, it's really quite a lake, pretty expansive. And I stopped and poked my way through the trees and saw this beautiful, absolutely serene setting. Now, if you've read Walden Pond, oh, it's not called Walden Pond, it's Walden, Life in the Woods, and it was in the woods. Thoreau built a cabin there on land that was owned by Emerson. And there the cabin he stayed for, he says, 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. And while he was there, he was, of course, a naturalist, and we know this about him as well. But he was someone on a spiritual journey as well. And he loved the quiet of Walden Pond. In his little cabin, he had often entertained people because he was somewhat well known and people came to visit him. He was on this experiment, living in the woods for a couple of years. But he had in this cabin, even though many visitors visited him, what he called a withdrawing room. Not a drawing room, but a withdrawing room. And there it was that he went for a place and a space of quiet. And that's what we're going to talk about today, a quiet place. And we're going to look to find where that space is that we can be quiet, why it's important, and what the benefit is to us. I put together a key spiritual truth. In the quiet, we know our identity, experience peace, and feel comfort. Once again, in the quiet, we know our identity, experience peace, and feel comfort. Sorry, I was ahead of myself there for a moment. Of course, we're going to talk about true identity. We're going to talk about withdrawing, the kind of withdrawing that Thoreau did. And we're going to talk again about the comfort of quiet. But let's begin with this. What is a quiet place? I want to give some sense of what a quiet place is and can be for each of us. So that, of course, can be a physical place. And there are lots of physical places that we can make for our quiet space. Some of us have an altar in our home, and we spend some time in quiet or in meditation there. Some of us have a walk in the woods as our quiet place, or a walk on the mountains here in Payson. And some of us just have that place in the backyard or on the front porch where we go to be physically quiet. And what a sense of peace comes over us if we bring our attention to that place of quiet. There's a song that we're going to have play for our meditation song, and it puts it like this. The name of the song is A Quiet Place. It was nice to have the title of the message and the song go together. Whether a garden small or on a mountain tall, the quiet place may be found. But a quiet place may not only be a quiet place in terms of physicality, it may be a quiet place of the mind. A place where we sense being more than doing. Of course, the world around us is busy, sometimes frenetic, and even our own lives, social media and phone calls and texts and emails and everything else precludes our living in that quiet place for a period of time. Our mind teems with thoughts, one after another, tumbling over each other. Monkey mind, we call it. And we can't seem to get to that place of peace. And sometimes the place we need for real comfort. When your mind is noisy, the quiet place is needful. You may not recognize it at first, but when your mind is noisy, the quiet place is needful. Donna read last week a reading from Edward Carpenter, a poet, a philosopher, and he just explains it so well that I can't do it better. So I'm going to read what he said about quieting your mind. Let your mind be quiet, realizing the beauty of the world and the immense, the boundless treasures that it holds in store. All that you have within you, all that your heart desires, and all that your nature so specifically fits you for, that or the counterpart of it waits embedded in the great whole for you. It will surely come to you. What a promise. But it takes a little bit of action, a little bit of intention, a little bit of affirmation on our part to get to that. So, do you get a sense of what that quiet place can be, either physically or in mind? And we'll come on a little later to talk about how we can find that quiet place. Why is it important? Well, I picked 4 ways that I think it's important. I think it's important to hear, to know, to intend, and to affirm. Let's go with hearing first. You remember the still small voice. How often do you hear the still small voice? Well, usually it's so noisy, either in your mind or in your world, that you don't hear the still small voice, if you're like me. But the still small voice is what we listen to hear. There's a poet, John White, that said something like this: everybody should sit near a brook and listen. Just that simple. Well, hard to get to, but that simple. When we hear that still small voice, we're going to be much more sure of what our heart's desires are, because that still small voice comes from within, not from without someplace, although some of us may even hear it in an audible fashion. But that still small voice connects us with the deepest desires that we have. And it connects us with that which we are drawn to. That is which is uniquely us. But we miss that if we don't hear that still small voice. Do you ever sit and just listen to your breathing? Listen to your body, listen to your heart, listen to your core. Listen for that still small voice. If you don't do that very often, I recommend that your quiet space is the place to do that. It's important because it's there that we know. In Unity, we talk about the Christ within, and we talk about the powers of wisdom and understanding. And they're, again, not out there in some outside place that we go to reach, but they come from the inside, working their way out. Knowing, we know so much more than we think we know. We're perplexed, and because of the hubbub of life, we stay perplexed. But when we find the quiet place, we have a place of knowing. That's very comforting in itself, to feel that you know. Yeah, and I'm sure you've had that experience where suddenly from within you, something happens and you know there is a truth that you know. But I recommend that you court that experience in the quiet place. So it's important because it's there that we intend in that quiet place. When we can get away from planning, we can get down to the core of intending. Once we know, once we get a sense of who we are uniquely, our true identity, even our divinity, then we can move forward to intend. And there is power in intention. It's the process of living life on purpose, not just willy-nilly, but on purpose. Intention. Also the question of what is my purpose? Again, that knowing and that intention begins within in the quiet place. What is our legacy? How many of you have thought, I wonder what legacy I will be leaving? If I were to do it over again, I'd start thinking about that a lot sooner. But it doesn't matter where we're at. It's where we're at. Perfect place, actually. But time to think about purpose, time to think about legacy. And then the quiet place is important because of affirmation. An affirmation developed or found in the quiet is very powerful. You've probably read books like perhaps Lessons in Truth with Emily Kading, where there's a very, very powerful affirmation, and we can adapt that and include that in our affirmations. But I think that knowing our uniqueness, getting the sense of our purpose, and then moving on to form our own affirmation that really matches that is really powerful. So I'd recommend that you do a lot of affirmation writing, but not before you've gone to the quiet place. Edward Carpenter goes on to say, and this is about the noise of the mind, do not recklessly spill the waters of your mind in this direction and in that, lest you become like a spring, lost and dissipated in the desert. But draw them together in a little compass and hold them still, so still, and let them become clear, so clear. So how do I find this quiet place? Well, for each of us, that physical quiet place is going to be different. In Saturday Soul Boost yesterday, we had a little discussion. And it was surprising to me how often that quiet place was found just being at home. Not a lot of work to that. But it might be in your garden or in your meditation chapel, Betty. Or it might be on the hike up on Stewart's Ridge. Or it might be just in one small place that you go to at your home or in your home or someplace where you can just withdraw, using that word withdrawing again, from all that's happening in your life. You can withdraw from that which is going pell-mell in your mind. That quiet place. A physical place is very important. But even more important, because it all begins inside, works its way outside, is how do I shut out the noise? How do I withdraw from the noise of my mind and of my world? One of the time-honored ways, and we often use it prior to meditation, is that of breathing. So I'm going to speak for a moment about what I call patterned breathing. For some of us, it's as simple as breathing in, holding it for a minute, and breathing out. That's a pattern of breathing. Or you may have adopted the pattern of a guru. It just fits with you. You may breathe into a number of counts, hold for a number of counts, breathe out for a number of counts, and just hold it as your breath has exhausted itself. That's called box breathing. What it does is it takes your attention away from all of that noise and puts it in a place where you can experience the divine in you, the knowing, the intending, the affirming that will make a difference in your life, that will manifest differently than otherwise if you just kind of let things go as they will. I picked up a book because it really was right on key with what I was talking about. It's by Thich Nhat Hanh. Many of you know of him. A Buddhist monk from Vietnam originally, Spent a lot of time in Thailand, and what a wonderful and wonderful thinker, a wonderful sage who can make it and put it in terms that you can understand it. And the book that I picked up was Silence, the Power of Quiet in a Noisy World. That was right on target. And there was a very simple but serious pattern breathing exercise that he recommended. I'll share it with you. Tom, if you can put that, and I have this on a handout. If you can pass that out to people, Charlotte, that would be great. And we'll put it up on the screen as well. And there we go. This, again, is adapted from Thich Nhat Hanh in his book, Silence, the Power of Quiet in a Noisy World. It's simple. He just uses breathing in and breathing out. But he puts it just a little bit differently in 4 different ways here. You're getting there. They won't come apart, huh? There you go. So first of all, just so very simple. And how more simple could it be? Could it be simpler, I guess is what I should say it. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Somehow that placing of attention on our breath brings us to the quiet. He goes on to suggest a couple of others. Breathing in, my breath grows deep. Breathing out, my breath grows slow. Breathing in, I smile. Breathing out, I release. Breathing in, I dwell in the present moment. Breathing out, I enjoy the present moment. If you would find the quiet, try patterned breathing. Make it as simple. Make it what really connects with you. Perhaps these examples from Thich Nhat Hanh will be helpful. And that brings us to meditation, and I won't talk a lot about it, but I will say that in Meditation for Dummies, which is really a good book, it says, sit down and shut up. That's the start. Quiet. There are a couple other things that we can do to access this, to get to that place of quiet, particularly in our mind. One of them that I like is naming the noise. So the neighbors are causing a big racket. There's a dog barking on this side. Even naming that noise and inviting the noise into your sense of being can bring you to a place of quiet. So name the noise and invite it in. Maybe you want to go on to engaging the opposite of the noise. So it could be chaos that's swirling around you, and your focus moves to peace, as Betty read, inner peace in the Daily Word. Seems difficult, but give it a start. You'll get there if you continue to practice it. Spiritual practice, we call it. And then finally, what Thich Nhat Hanh alluded to in his exercise, be present. Be present to whatever situation you're in. Be attentive. Be aware. Be present to that person you're speaking with. Be present to yourself. I hope these are helpful ideas that will bring you to that place of quiet. Back to the key spiritual truth where we started. In the quiet, we know our identity, experience peace, and feel comfort. Remember Thoreau in his little cabin on the side of Walden Pond with all that beautiful forest around him and that quiet. He talked about it. It was so quiet that he could talk to somebody the other side of the lake, or the pond as it's called, but it was a lake, quite distant, because of the quiet. So I recommend that you do like Mr. Thoreau did. Find a withdrawing room, a place to just back away from the noise of your mind or the noise of the world. So I say, find your quiet place. And so it is. I'm going to stand here for a moment because I want us to experience this as we move into meditation. Tom is going to play that song, A Quiet Place. And at the end of the song, I'm not going to come back up and say some more words. I'm just going to allow you to slip into that quiet place. We'll spend some time in quiet together. Perhaps you'll use one of those recommended sayings about breathing in and breathing out, what you work for. It's up to you. But I won't come back up and start a talking meditation. We'll just go into the silence. And then I'll come up and we'll conclude it. But we listen now to the meditation song as we drift into meditation. We're not putting the words up. I decided that we just want you to hear it, to take it in, and to